Hey everybody, this is Les and Christy, and this is the Easy Farms Podcast, where we are doing things from the ground up. We're here to help guide your homesteading adventure and hopefully make the journey a little easier.
Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. I want to thank you so much for being with us this week. Hope you had a great week last week. Les is not going to be with us. Once again, we had told you before a few weeks ago that we're working on a chicken tractor, an egg mobile for our next batch of chickens that are coming in, and the deadline's coming up, and so he's needed to take this time where there is no rain and try to get some of the stuff done. So that leads me into a little bit of updates this week. One is rain. We have had so much rain. Probably where you are, you can relate. You've probably had all that too. It's been a lot of rain. I'm going to be honest, I'm surprised my garden has not really had some issues from too much water. Fortunately, most of my garden is in actually all my garden this year, besides all my rows of berries, is in raised beds. But we talk about that more in future podcasts. But those that have been following us know that we're doing raised bed boxes this year. It wasn't because we just didn't want to have anything in the garden. It's mainly just because we've been on the deadline for so many things and just couldn't get the in-ground garden in between rain. But this country has had lots of rain, and I know your garden is probably suffering possibly from it, but hopefully we're getting enough sun to pop out and dry up some of the soil to a nice moisture and grow that garden. I'm going to be walking out to my garden today. I have not done that for about 5 days. I can't believe that. And I was just saying last week, I think it was last week's podcast it was the week before about gardening, and talking about how you can, just going out for a little bit each day to try to get a hold of your garden, get a hold of the weeds, get a hold of any pruning, any of that. And if I didn't do that myself, we have had a really busy week from being gone to spending the weekend visiting with our daughter and her fiance. We got to go, our daughter and her friends, so we got to go wedding dress shopping. And so she said yes to the dress. We were very thankful because she has upped her wedding to a much smaller wedding in not very long from now than what they had originally planned. So we are very thankful. We just know the Lord just lined that dress up for her. She didn't have to try on but a few and just found that perfect dress that we just all agreed was for her. So that was such a blessing. The day was sweet. The weekend was very, very sweet. And we do miss spending time with them. Going back a little bit to the rain, we have had issues, and I know we've talked about it because this has been an ongoing thing with weeds. In our fields where our sheep are, the weeds have been terrible. I mean, bad. And we can't get the bush hog in there. Well, first we had a problem with the bush hog breaking, and in between projects, trying to get this part ordered, finally get this bush hog to lift up. You ought to try figuring out a way to lift up a bush hog if you don't have the right equipment to do that. And we don't. And then trying to get it fixed, and then bush hog. So we made a decision. We have a neighbor who is selling theirs used, their old one used, and it was not much more than just a part itself on the other one. So we're so thankful. We're so thankful for that. But the problem is we can't get the ground dried up enough to get out there and cut anything. I mean, we're getting to the point where we definitely can't see our chickens where they are in the field, and that's not the best environment for them, for predators. However, fortunately, we do have livestock guardian dogs with them, so that we feel we can trust that. But we barely see our sheep. Our lambs, we can't even see anymore. That's how bad it is. So we're really looking forward to the day he can get out there after several warm days, and get everything cut down. And I tell you what, we told you last time, we feel like we need to get our goats back that we got rid of just for the summer, and then give them back to our friends in the fall and let them eat things our sheep aren't eating. And I don't know, I think the rent-a-goat thing is perfect because we've had goats, done goats, been there. They are great, sweet, cute, but We only use them for killing weeds. Eating weeds along fence lines, up tree lines that we need, grasses that maybe some sheep and stuff won't eat. They'll eat it all. They'll eat thistles and thorny things, and which is perfect. And but however, we don't want them all year. We just need them like from maybe April to November, and then get rid of them, or April to October, and then be done with them. And so I think I'm going to talk to our friends about renting those goats, but they're so sweet to us. They just like come back and get what you need and just keep them and bring them back. And so we haven't done that yet, but I think that time's getting closer and closer with that. Just leading into a little bit of today's podcast, we are going to talk about tomatoes. And one of the things that all this rain, and I'm going to have to get back up to my tomatoes and really look at them, is some of the damage too much overhead rain can bring. And we're going to talk about that. But from the window, from looking at what I can look at, they still look fine, but that is not going to tell me I need to get right up on them. So let's go ahead and talk about tomatoes. I know you've already planted your tomatoes and you're probably right in the middle of your growing season, but I'm going to take just a moment and talk about just a few things in early spring of planting. And then we're going to get right into some things that can help you with your tomatoes for the rest of the summer to get really good yield, could get really good tasty tomatoes, things like that, and some things that'll help you. But for those that haven't planted tomatoes yet, or still have maybe a season where you're listening that season hasn't fully hit, I'm just going to talk about a few things. Hopefully this will even help you for next year. But some people buy a lot of their tomatoes from the box store, the big garden stores, things like that. And that is fine. That's an easy way of doing things. It's more costly, but if that's okay with you, you can look for tomatoes that look like 2 or 3 different tomatoes are growing in one pot. And if you do that and you can separate them nicely and get them out in the garden, you could get 2 or 3 sets of tomatoes off of just the cost of one of those pots. So look for that. That will help you with that. However, typically tomatoes are seeded out in our part of the country. I'm in zone 7B. Typically, we seed out around February. That helps. I seed them out inside. I don't seed them out outside because just the temperatures. They need warmth to germinate. We have a wood burning stove. That's where we help germinate ours because of the warmth in the house. But if you don't have that warmth, you can get gardening, like seeding heating pads that are just for that. And that helps get the warmth up to help germinate faster. And do that. But you can just seed out some tomatoes. My recommendation is seeding multiple varieties. There's cherry tomatoes, little tiny spoon tomatoes in the small category, grape tomatoes, things like that. The next size up, you've got like Roma tomatoes, paste tomatoes. I'm not looking at brands right now right off the top of my head, but there's a nice little smaller, perfect size, smaller tomato to come in for the next size. You have beefsteak tomatoes, things like that are great for Better Boy. Those are good ones. Those are good for slicing, for hamburgers and sandwiches. They're nice, good sizes for that. The paste style tomatoes are a little more of a beefy tomato, meaning are meaty. I'm just going to say meaty tomato. They have less seeds and more tomato, less water. They're great for canning. You can can any of these tomatoes that you want, any of these varieties, but they are really nice for canning. They're a lot more tomato, less watery, less seeds, and that really does help. Also, one thing to know when you're getting ready to seed your tomatoes is know if your tomato is a determinate or an indeterminate tomato. The package doesn't always say it, so get on the internet and start looking up what is determinate, what is indeterminate. If you have a determinate tomato, it's just what it says. It has a determinate growing size. Some of them can grow still really tall, but they're a bushy tomato, thicker in leaves, and they can still grow pretty big. But they have a determinate growing size and more of a determinate growing season. And you don't need, you could do well with those with a tomato cage or a tomato stake. Those are really great for that. Do an indeterminate though will grow more longer. I mean, they'll have an indeterminate growing period. They will just keep growing, and they don't grow as thick with leaves or any of that. So you need something like a trellis to put them on, a cattle panel. You can put those are some of the cheapest ways, not the prettiest ways as far as your trellising your tomatoes, but some of the more economical ways is buying like a 16-foot cattle panel, typically about $30, and put those up with some T-posts and plant your tomatoes alongside it. Before long, it'll grow up, it'll cover those cattle panels and you won't even see it anyhow. But you can vine them on up, thin them out, get some airflow going, and just keep those going all summer long into the fall until pretty much the freeze takes them. You can also do your cattle panel in an arch way. And that helps with, knowing that in the beginning of seeding. That'll make a big, big difference for where you're going to plant your tomatoes and how they're going to look, and even your budget and what you need to do. So some of the things you can do with the determinate real quick, that is you can put them on the cattle panel. But what we did for many, many, many years was we did this with determinate and indeterminate. We turned around and we put T-post in the ground every so many feet in our row garden. And then we had wire, and we'd start off with a low wire about, I forgot how many inches up to start tying them to or pulling them to. And then as they kept growing, then Les would put out another wire about, excuse me, I don't know, a foot, 18 inches higher, and then another one. And then you could grow them along the wire, and stretch them out across to that and all that. Now, when it comes to planting, a lot of people talk about spacing in the tomatoes, and that does make a difference. But I think what personally makes a difference in your tomatoes is the thinning, so you can thin some of the leaves and get good airflow. Not quite as much spacing, even though the packet will say 12 to 18 inches. However, I have learned in my raised beds how tight I can get some of these tomatoes to grow, and they do fabulous. But if I can thin out some of the leaves and get some good airflow, that does help with disease control, sun getting into those darker places, things like that. Now, we can also talk about transplanting. So when you get ready to seed out, tomatoes love to be transplanted. They're not a vegetable that goes straight in the garden like several other vegetables can do. They do really well with transplanting. So get your good soil mixture, get your seeds going, your little seedlings going. And then when they get to a certain size, you'll know, transplant them into a bigger cup, just a little bit bigger gardening cup, and let them grow for a little while. Inside, grow lights are great. That helps them grow. They need that type of light. And as you start to get a little bit bigger and you get warmer days, it may be, you may have good warm days and then cold days or whatever. Take them outside, not to put them in a sunny spot, but get them outside and get them to a hardening off place. Meaning that, if you notice your vine, your little tomato seedlings, they're kind of wimpy. They don't have a lot of oomph to them and strength in them in the stalk or any of that. So if you put them outside, mainly under carport or in a shaded area, but airflow can get to them, maybe a little wind can get to them, and the daylight can get to them, that will start conditioning that tomato and hardening it off to be able to go into your garden. And you want to start it out kind of slow, put them out there a few hours. You don't want their first so many times out there on a big windy day, but just a nice sunny day in the shaded area. I put mine on our back deck and it just works. And then I bring them back in to try to get them used to temperatures. Definitely don't let them freeze or even get close to freezing, especially tomatoes don't do well with that, but especially at this young little tender age for them. It helps the root system get stronger. And then eventually you're going to be able to take them and plant them into your garden, and it helps the everything to have a good, strong tomato. And don't forget, when you're planting, A tomato is, if you look at your mature tomato stalk as it's growing, if you just go out there and look at it and look really closely at the stalk, you'll see all these little kind of like hairs and bumps and things like that. Tomatoes do like to grow roots from all points of the tomato. They really like that. And so what I will do is, I don't care if my tomato is 6 inches tall or if my tomato is, 12 inches tall before I put it in the ground. I'm going to take off lots. I'm going to take off probably half of those tomato stems, and I'm going to bury it at least half or more than the height of that tomato is into the ground. Every bit of that going underground is going to turn into a root system for you. And it's going to be very, very beneficial in the growth of your tomatoes. And it'll help you a great deal in the strength of your tomatoes as they grow up really big and thick. So, and another thing, you can plant tomatoes sideways. You can dig a trench and you can turn them down sideways, put 6-7 inches of your root, of your stem down in the ground, turn the last little bit up, straight up. Put some soil all over it, pack that soil around that part that's going straight up to help hold it, start growing straight up. All of that will turn into a root system. Also, let me just let you know, this year I have several trellises, and I went out there after a few weeks, and I just happened to be really going around trying to prune the bottom half of it all. And I happened to notice the last set of tomatoes, about 4 or 5 tomato plants, probably about 4, I pulled them out of the cup. I laid them down next to the cattle panel trellis, and intending to go back as I was messing with the others to make sure I got it planted. And whatever happened, I totally forgot to plant them. And I didn't think about it. They just laying there. So now later on, I'm going back through all of them, trying to trim some leaves, things like that. And I happen to notice on the soil, that whole cup of soil with the root of that tomato is laying on top of my soil. It's not even planted, but every bit of that tomato that was laying on the ground started growing roots. And I thought, I am not going to disturb that. I'm going to see how well it goes all summer. And so far, it's growing all right up my tomato, my cattle panels, trellises. It's growing. All the roots are growing down to the ground. I didn't put soil on top of the existing cup of soil with the roots. I haven't done that, and I'm just going to see how well it does. But there's a lot of forgiveness in tomatoes. I've grown tomatoes for years, not having a clue of the things that I'm about to tell you, and they've done really well. However, the opposite of that, I've had some really bad years. So some of these things I'm going to talk to you about your tomatoes has proven to be done. It's proven very well for us and our tomato success for that gardening summer. So one of them is, if you haven't done this yet, don't forget to put straw mulch around your tomatoes. Straw. You can do that not only around your tomatoes, but your other plants. That will hold down the weeds. It will hold down the water, and it helps from water splashing back up, taking the soil and splashing it back up onto your leaves, your lower leaves on any of your plants, which can cause disease. So what you want to do is make sure you can put straw or mulch down on top of that and help that out. Also on your tomatoes, make sure you go about, 12, some people say 18 inches up, and cut out all of your leaves, all your bottom leaves. And I know that's challenging because that looks like amazing growth, and it is growth, but that's going to really push that vine up, really push that growth out. So if you haven't done that, do that. Also start looking for your suckers. And that is where you'll have a plant growing in a V. You'll have the main stalk, another stalk growing from it. It'll be kind of a wide V shape. And then another plant will be growing right in the midst, right in the bottom of the V. You want to take those off. Those are not going to produce what you want. That's going to be a drain on everything. It'll push all the nutrients to the rest of the leaves and the blossoms. That's going to grow your tomatoes. However, I've heard a lot of people say, if you take those off and you can root them and plant them and get a whole nother free tomato plant out of it. I have never done that. Typically, I have a lot of tomato plants going, and I just get out there and I just start breaking and throwing. I don't want them. But maybe one year when I start having some more time on my hands, I don't know when that's going to be, then I will attempt that one and I'll let you know how that goes. But I think they know what they're talking about. A lot of people are saying it. So go for it. That'll give you a free plant. Go for it. One of the reasons you want to prune your plant is you want to prune a lot of vine leaves back and the bottom off because one, you don't want the water to splash out onto those bottom leaves. It will cause blight. It can cause blight on your tomatoes. Tomatoes are very susceptible to certain diseases, and one of it is blight. It's a fungal disease. It can harm your yields. It can kill your plant if not taken care of. If you do get that, you'll get some brown spots, things like that on there, maybe some turning of a little bit of yellow along with it. You want to cut all that off. You want to get anytime there's a disease looking leaf, you want to go and get rid of that. And you also want to get airflow going because it needs a lot of that to dry up the watering, drop from the rain, and you can get a lot of sunlight through that. And you want that on your leaves. You want stuff like that. One thing I want to talk about is watering your tomatoes. Tomatoes do better with watering at the base. And not everybody can do that, which would mean a watering system, soaker hose, or some type of watering system that's in your garden that sprays water. Or you can put it on a timer or whatever. And if you can do that, that's so much better. So much better. It holds down diseases, things like that. Because tomatoes like water, but they don't do as well with too much water, and they don't do as well with too much water on their leaves, hanging out, just sitting on their leaves. But I know you can't help it when there is a lot of rain like we're experiencing. That's why I need to really get out there and really examine all my tomatoes, see if there's any things I need to cut off, cut out some more leaves for airflow, things like that. We've had a lot of rain. I think in a couple days, we're going to have probably about 4 good days of sunshine, which is really going to help it. Now, one thing I've noticed in all my gardening is if you go through a little drought, and then you get some rain, the vegetables will just pop out. The growth will just come. You can water all the time from your garden hose or your watering system or your sprinkler, and it will give it a lot of what it needs. But rain carries so much nutrients, and it's really going to grow with that rain. So I'm not really too upset about the rain, but I personally, like we all do, we just kind of want it more when we want it, right? But right now, it's a little extra, but I'm just trusting my garden's going to handle it because it's got a lot of good nitrogen in it, other things in it that the ground and the vegetables do need. So moving on a little bit to watering. Oh, wait a minute, not watering, but going back to watering. I know some of you can't always have a good watering system along the base of your plants, and that's okay. Do whatever you can. I personally cannot sit out there and just hold a hose on all my plants and water them. And we this year are trying to build a watering system bit by bit, but all my raised beds will not have it. So I have to do some sprinkler system in all this. And one thing about watering, just to let you know, it is important for it to have the water, even if it is overhead from your sprinkler. So don't neglect that. In that, go ahead, watch your tomatoes, give them a little bit of dry. They need some of that. You can give them a little bit of stress. That's okay. And give them a good water. They do really well with just a good long watering time, and get those roots really good and soaked. Get that water all up into the plants, all in the nutrients going up the stalk, into the plants, into the fruit. They need that. If you don't keep doing that often through the summer, often enough, and all of a sudden it's been drying and you just been spurts of watering, and then all of a sudden here comes a torrential couple of days of a downpour, that's when your tomatoes are going to take off growing, but it's not conditioned to that. And a lot of times what's going to happen is you're going to get all those cracks, a lot more of those cracks in your tomatoes. You know how you go out there and you got this gorgeous growing tomato, and then all of a sudden you get all this rain and they're waiting on that beautiful tomato to grow. And then a week later, that tomato's growing beautifully, but then all these cracks come out at the top and eek. That is not pretty. It's frustrating. That is typically caused from just a sudden burst of water. And so remember that on more frequent, heavy watering, less just bits and bits and bits of it. So give it a good dose of watering and go with that as best you can. You can still eat those. Nothing's wrong with them. It's just kind of a little extra tough in those areas. And I'm not as crazy about that. I'm definitely like any of us. We want the perfect tomato. But going into some understanding of flavor on your tomatoes. I have grown tomatoes for a long time. And some year we've had really good soil, really good amending the soil, really good compost on the soil. And that's really helped. But I have had years where I've eaten tomatoes and thought, what is wrong? There is no flavor in this tomato. I'm thinking, is it the seeds? Is it that type of brand? Or what is it? I couldn't figure it out. And I'd have these off and on, ruining just about a whole summer of tomatoes. And then I finally saw one time people talking about different things to do with your tomatoes. And I started doing that, and it did make a huge difference in the flavor of my tomatoes. And one is you do want a good compost on your tomato. And if you can do that yourself and you can collect compost, there are people that also sell compost. I've seen it on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. They sell compost. You just may want to add, is it an organic compost? Is it exactly more of what it is? But that part's up to you. You can get it if you can't compost enough. You can order sometimes good compost from a really good reputable gardening center. They may have it. We order ours from a place that has they call it zoo poo because it's from all their animals. And we let that compost in a little longer. And then we add stuff to that, to like some more good soil, good quality soil, sand, things like that. But that's how we do our raised beds. But you can add all that stuff on top and it helps. It has good nitrogen, potassium, things like that. But one of the things that I had learned several years ago was aspirin on your tomatoes. And I know that sounds funny, but when your tomatoes are, a few weeks after planting, every couple of weeks, you can put an aspirin in about an 8-ounce spray bottle. If you have a lot more to your garden, then, just put more aspirin and do the math according to your spray container on your pump sprayer. But it triggers a natural defense system in the tomatoes. They think they're under attack, and then they bring out a defense against pest and disease, and the plant will feel a little stressed. And like I said earlier, your tomato plant getting a little stressed is okay because then it brings out a defense system. They're always trying to protect themselves in that. And aspirin brings a good hormone to the plant that makes that attack, and it jumps the immune system. And when their immune system jumps up, it goes to the plant. It goes to the fruit, and that really helps the plant. And you can do this. So you kind of want to, spray the soil and spray the leaves and put a lot more in the soil if you want. That's okay. And that will help with the tomato plant. And I started doing that, and it made a huge difference. And another thing that makes a big, big, big difference is molasses. Get you some good organic blackstrap molasses. It is high in sugar. It is high in potassium. It raises the sugars and the flavor in your tomatoes, and it helps with the soil, the microbes of the soil. It brings a natural fertilizer. It helps with pests, and your tomatoes will be sweeter and ready to eat. Which leads me to making sure when you prune your tomatoes, just side note, it's better to prune your tomatoes. I've heard afternoon because your tomatoes are the sweetest. I've also heard early morning. I typically prune mine later morning So, I may actually, you know what? I think I'm going to do a test on that this year. I'm going to prune from the same tomato plant one day in the afternoon, one day early morning, and one day late morning. And I'm going to actually do a test and see that. I'll probably put that on my Instagram and see how that does. But molasses is really good. You can they need potatoes, sorry, for crying out loud. Tomatoes, they need potassium and nitrogen, but it's harder to get more potassium, and it will bring those flavors on up. But another way you can get some potassium is soak some banana peels for a few days in water and pour that over the base of your plants too. Give it some of that and see how that does. But what you want to do with the molasses, you want to get 2 to 3 tablespoons of molasses, get it good and dissolved in a gallon of water, and you can spray that every couple of weeks also. So that really helps. It also adds, I've read that it helps with magnesium, the micronutrients also in that. And it also helps resist helps pest resistant on that, and helps with some root rot. But speaking of root rot, or blossom end rot also is, or not root rot, but that helps with root rot. So let's talk about blossom end rot. Blossom end rot can be a calcium deficiency, and it is typically caused by too much watering. One of the things you can do in that is help with drainage, not overwatering. Rain, I know, is going to be something you cannot help with. You just got to trust the rain, trust God, trust the nutrients in the rain to help. And well-drained soil will help with blossom end rot also. When planting tomatoes, you really can get a lot of bang for your buck. You just have a little seed, start out with some soil, and just go for it. You can put it in your pots, you can put it in your raised beds, you can put it in your garden, row garden, whatever you want to do. And if you do a lot of the things that I've shared with you, and I know there's other treatments for tomatoes, other advice out there, I would love to hear some of that I didn't mention, but I'm just trying to think about some of the things that I've noticed has helped me in that. Just let me know if you do have any of that. Please let me know. But you do all this, you're going to have really some sweeter tasting and better tasting tomatoes, big tomatoes, maybe less diseases, things that will try to attack the tomatoes. I noticed that from my tomato gardening years of experience, these are the things that's really helped me. And I've been very thankful. And don't forget, your tomatoes will start coming in bit by bit. It's perfect timing the way they all come in. And then boom, there it is. All of a sudden you're out there with baskets and baskets full of the same time of your tomatoes. And you're going, what am I going to do with this? So when that happens, just remember, don't put your tomatoes in the refrigerator. Tomatoes are still basically ripening, and put them on the counter. You'll have a really good flavored tomato. Go ahead and make your plan on how you're going to put those tomatoes up. If you can't get them all put up, I've had many years where I have cored my tomatoes and I have put them in a bag. I've washed them, cored them, and put them in a bag, filled up gallon bags, put them in the freezer, and pulled them out in the winter when I'm done with gardening season, and canned spaghetti sauce or just tomatoes. Also, you can freeze them. You can chop them up and freeze them. A lot of ways I've seen people do, and I've done this if you have time, is to go ahead and get the skin off. If you don't want that, you can blend it all up with the skin on. But if you could do that, and if you want to do that, core them, slice them in half, lay them on cookie sheets. Make sure it's a cookie sheet with a good edge all the way around it because of the water that's about to come out of your tomatoes. Put olive oil, garlic, and good seasonings, oregano, basil, things like that from your garden, and roast them in the oven. And then they're so good. And then just can them that way. But what happens to me in tomato seasoning is tomatoes start coming together all at once, all of a sudden, and I am swamped with tomatoes. And I may not have the days to put them up. I may have something going on. I may be going out of town, whatever. And that's just the way it is, because I still do work, and my work causes me to go out of town a lot. So I can't help that. I can't plan that perfect fall vacation after gardening season all the time. So I do a lot of freezing, and I pull them out in the winter when I don't have all that to contend with at that time. So go ahead and plan when you're going to do this. Plant extra. It's always good. If you have chickens, you can give some of those to the chickens. Don't give a boatload at the same time, constantly days in, days out with chickens. I have heard a little too much of that acidity of tons of tomatoes, but that's probably not going to be your case. You're probably going to be planting as needed for your family and a little extra. I do give tomatoes to my chickens. They are fine. It has never harmed them. I just watch out if I'm going to be giving a boatload to them. So, tomatoes are great. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can do your salsa can. You can puree, do your tomato sauce, things like that. We told you once before, I think we told you about 1 year when we put up in one day 96 quart jars of spaghetti sauce. For crying out loud, we were eating spaghetti sauce forever. And that didn't even include all the salsa and just tomatoes and other things we put up. So, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. You can store a year or 2 years worth of, canned tomatoes for your family. And, just open that up and boom, there it is. You got stuff for your vegetable soup, all those things. But I hope you enjoyed this podcast today. I want to thank you so much for listening. If you liked this podcast, we do hope you liked it, that you would consider giving Les and me, no, Les is not here today and he does miss being here, but giving us a 5-star rating. Share with your friends and family. Let us hear from you. We'd love it if you make a comment. And if there's anything you want us to talk about on this podcast, we'll do our best to talk about it and give a shout out to you if you want us to. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook. The link is at the bottom. We are on all major podcasting platforms. Want to end with the Bible verse for today. It is in the TLV version, Ecclesiastes 9:11. I further observed under the sun, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the mighty, nor does bread come to the wise, or wealth to the discerning, or favor to the skillful, for time and chance befall them all. Want to thank you so much for joining. We hope you have a blessed week, and we look forward to have you again on the next podcast from Easy Farms.